This is the city center. According to the locals, it features one of the most famous landmarks, Mogadishu. This area used to be a bustling port, but it has now been transformed into what they call a beach. Though beach is a generous term here because there's neither sand nor pebbles. And what's particularly interesting is that people actually live right here on this spot. See that makeshift structure over there? Some guy put it together himself. He's draped a few old blankets over it and even built a makeshift frame to hold them up. Look, he actually lives and sleeps right here. It's warm enough for him, and he can catch fish for his lunch just steps from his dwelling. What more could he possibly need? Absolutely nothing else, really.
Let me start by clarifying that there are actually two countries involved when we speak of Somalia. The principal country is Somalia, with its capital in Mogadishu. The other, known as Somaliland, is completely separate. Somaliland declared itself independent from Somalia, which the Somali government considers an illegal separation. As a result, Somalia often labels the residents of Somaliland as rebels, traitors, or other derogatory terms. Despite these tensions, the two don't engage in active conflict. Notably, Somaliland has established itself as an ally of Western and European nations, enhancing its safety levels significantly. This alliance makes it a popular destination for European tourists who can safely wander the streets in the evenings, enjoy a leisurely coffee, and relax without the need for security measures or fixed travel routes. One can truly feel secure in Somaliland. In contrast, the main country of Somalia presents significant safety risks, especially if one is alone at night. It is indeed a very dangerous place.
This hotel strikingly resembles a prison. There are fortification structures and barbed wire all over the place. The presence of heavy security and multiple observation towers gives it an intense vibe. It really makes me feel like I've somehow ended up inside the Pentagon.
This country presents substantial and severe dangers, primarily to its local inhabitants, particularly those who occupy high-ranking positions or serve as government officials. Explosions, shootings, and kidnappings persistently occur at intervals, frequently arising from ongoing internal conflicts among various factions that are incessantly vying for dominance. Moreover, the nation is segmented into multiple autonomous regions, each possessing its own distinct governance structure, thereby exacerbating the already intricate internal power struggles.
In the area that Google Maps simply marks as Somalia, there are several unrecognized states. For example, Somaliland. This state has its own passports, currency, and president. Plus, it's quite safe there. Tourists come by bus, visiting beach resorts. You can walk around this territory without any guards. In addition to Somaliland, there are several other autonomous states within Somalia that ally with the main Somali government but live by their own constitutions. One of these is Puntland, home to the infamous Somali pirates. Thus, there's no single government in Somalia at the moment.
The struggle for power in the country has been ongoing for many years. So why is it particularly dangerous for officials to be in Somalia? Only tourists might feel relatively safe there, but even this safety is not absolute. It's somewhat more reliable than it was 5 years ago. Why is this? Over the years, Somalia has seen the rise and spread of bandit and terrorist groups affiliated with globally banned organizations like Al-Qaeda and ISIS. These groups have grown stronger within the nation, targeting hotels frequented by tourists and conducting terror attacks. They do this to gain political points, increase their visibility, boost their popularity, and establish themselves as significant players on the political stage. This environment makes it extremely dangerous for officials and high-ranking individuals to remain in the country. The ongoing conflicts and instability have turned Somalia into a hotspot for violence and unrest, posing a constant threat to anyone seen as influential.
This wall was constructed to absorb and dampen the impact of blast waves. These blocks are specifically installed to halt the blast wave in case of an explosion occurring nearby. Behind these fortifications, people can take cover and remain unharmed.
After these events, many European countries, like the UK and France, as well as regions of the US, issued guidelines and warnings advising against visiting this country due to its dangers for tourists. However, there are still people who, despite these warnings and bans, choose to go there. As a result, getting into Somalia, like any other African country, is relatively easy. This is a big misconception. Oh, how did you get there? It's very simple. You book a tour. There are many international companies that sell these tours. You'll have to pay quite a lot for it. For example, a trip to Somalia will cost more than $10,000. $1,000. After buying the tour, the people who meet you upon arrival organize all the conditions for moving around the country. There are flights to Mogadishu from any part of the world, from Dubai, from Egypt, from Cairo, from Istanbul. You arrive and there's no need to request a visa in advance. Someone from your travel company meets you and on the spot they issue you a visa and take your photo. It's quite amusing. The whole process is simple and straightforward, like going to the store for bread or milk or taking a walk to the nearest coffee shop, just an everyday thing. After that, a person meets you and takes you outside. Along the way, about 5 or 6 armed people automatically start escorting you. I think such a large amount of security is definitely unnecessary. You get into an armored truck. This enhanced security, like that of a president, is due to the thousands of dollars you spent on the tour. It looks quite convincing, and it's obvious that you don't need 5 armed people accompanying you. What kind of shootout are they expecting? What forbidden things could you be carrying? How much heroin would you need to have with you to require 5 people for protection? It sometimes feels like an over-the-top action movie, but this is the standard protocol. You're greeted with this impressive security display and escorted everywhere. It's a surreal experience, almost like being in an action movie. You're never left alone, and while it may seem excessive, it's all part of the package you paid for. This level of protection is designed to ensure that tourists feel safe and that their trip goes as smoothly as possible. Even though the situation seems exaggerated, it gives a sense of security and care that justifies the high cost of the tour. Things were different back then. No one used to greet new arrivals with a smile or a welcoming gesture. When you landed in the country, there was a lineup of stern-looking guards waiting at the airport exit. You had to nervously approach them and try to negotiate your entry, not knowing who they were or what their intentions might be. Maybe they'd just been released from prison and you'd worry if they might try to take advantage of you, or worse. They demanded about $100 a day for their escort services, which left you feeling uneasy and unsafe. Nowadays, they've streamlined the whole process, making it more centralized and organized. It all looks very convincing, even intimidating, with an air of authority and efficiency. They whisk you away to this hotel, constructed in a really unique and unconventional manner. With its unusual architecture and layout, they drop you off, and to get to the hotel, you have to navigate through these mazes of hallways and passages, which were purposefully designed to be confusing because hotels with tourists were often targeted. Terrorists, shootings, explosions, you name it. The labyrinthine design is intended to protect the guests, creating a confusing barrier against potential attackers. It's a testament to the lengths they go to ensure safety in an unpredictable environment. The entire experience from airport to hotel has been meticulously crafted to minimize risks and maximize security.
This is one of the elite hotels in Mogadishu. There was another explosion here in August. It happened quite recently, about 2.5 to 3 months ago. At the time of the explosion, there was still no wall installed at this location. A car with terrorists drove up. There was an explosion, resulting in the deaths of around 17 people. And 3 days later, the hotel resumed accepting guests, because the residents are accustomed to such incidents. What? Closed down after every attack? They built a large certification structure. This structure is a huge wall. They also built 2 observation towers so that no one would dare to attack the tourist hotel again. But overall, the main part of Mogadishu still looks the same. You see, there are crumbling walls. This has been the case since the war, when there was complete chaos here. That's why about half of Mogadishu looks somewhat like this, semi-destroyed.
In the scenario where an individual plans to carry out a terrorist attack, such as setting off explosives inside a hotel, they would circumvent metal detectors and target less guarded areas to plant their bomb. These barriers are specifically constructed to absorb the impact of explosive shockwaves. After navigating through all the fortifications and structures designed to withstand blasts, you reach the core of the hotel. It resembles the luxurious resorts of Dubai, where guests unwind with cocktails. I distinctly recall the thorough screening. Security discovered a bottle of whiskey in my possession, purchased earlier. In accordance with Sharia laws of the Muslim country, they did not immediately confiscate it. Instead, they placed it carefully in a separate bag and returned it to me, enabling me to proceed with my journey. With that bottle of whiskey, I could savor my stay without ever leaving my room. In the hotel, the lavish surroundings beckoned with echoes of Dubai's opulence, inviting guests to indulge in their leisurely pursuits. With that bottle of whiskey in hand, I could enjoy the comforts of my room to the fullest extent possible.
The entire city is divided into zones separated by huge blast walls, barbed wire, and in some places they use uprooted tree roots as fencing. Look at this scene. It's like something out of a dystopian movie, except it's real life here.
In Mogadishu, there exist distinct guidelines for navigation. The city is segmented into various zones, regular areas where residents dwell, and the designated green zones. These green zones encompass government institutions, administrative offices, banks, essentially locations necessitating stringent security measures.
As long as we are in the green zone, you can feel safe. But despite this, there are very few people on the streets because only local residents or those who work with the government are allowed here. But as soon as we leave this zone, real life begins. Here, please. Here's an intersection. Here at the intersection, a person rides a donkey. Around are a million tuk-tuks, as the small taxis are called. Here's what a local minibus looks like. In this zone, real life begins, and accordingly, the level of security is completely different.
There are a few rules to access these areas. First, you must obtain government permission. Second, entry is restricted to daylight hours within specific time frames. Entry is prohibited after 4 or 5 in the evening. Third, if you wish to enter on foot, you must also secure additional permission, even if it's just verbal clearance from the police. This policy aims to define and protect these zones more effectively. In my view, this approach is quite peculiar, as it immediately segregates ordinary people who reside outside these green zones. Consequently, people develop animosity and resentment towards these areas because they are barred from entering based on specific regulations, creating a palpable sense of exclusion and division in the community. Such restrictions often foster a sense of unfairness and inequality among residents. This situation can lead to social tensions and grievances, undermining community cohesion and trust in governing authorities. There are a few rules to access these areas. First, you must obtain government permission. Second, entry is restricted to daylight hours within specific time frames. Entry is prohibited after 4 or 5 in the evening. Third, if you wish to enter on foot, you must also secure additional permission, even if it's just verbal clearance from the police. This policy aims to define and protect these zones more effectively. In my view, this approach is quite peculiar, as it immediately segregates ordinary people who reside outside these green zones. Consequently, people develop animosity and resentment towards these areas because they are barred from entering based on specific regulations, creating a palpable sense of exclusion and division in the community. Such restrictions often foster a sense of unfairness and inequality among residents. This situation can lead to social tensions and grievances, undermining community cohesion and trust in governing authorities. Residents find themselves increasingly alienated from parts of their own city, deepening the rift between those within and outside the designated zones. As a result, the urban landscape becomes symbolically and physically divided, exacerbating socioeconomic disparities. This complex web of regulations and their enforcement underscores broader issues of accessibility and justice in urban planning and governance. While we were journeying through the country, it gradually dawned on me that the idea of adhering to traffic rules is practically non-existent here. To the locals, the concept of traffic regulations is nothing more than fodder for jokes, a subject of endless amusement. Should you even suggest to them that traffic laws are taken seriously in other parts of the world, they would likely respond with thunderous laughter, a raucous and contagious hilarity that would stretch out for quite some time. I was thoroughly shocked by the daring and seemingly reckless way our driver handled the vehicle, his cavalier attitude towards safety blatantly apparent. Along our path, we found ourselves caught in a significant traffic jam, but instead of waiting patiently like one might expect, our driver audaciously veered into the lane for oncoming traffic. This lane was far from empty or blocked off. It was actively filled with vehicles coming straight at us, a stream of metal and motors. Yet this risky maneuver seemed to barely faze our driver as he continued to forge ahead with undeterred resolve. In addition to this, I noticed an even stranger occurrence when multiple tuk-tuks, in their frenzied effort to overtake and speed past our vehicle, started aggressively colliding with us. One after another, they joined the chaotic fray until a belligerent swarm surrounded us, all the while screaming and incessantly honking their horns in a cacophonous and frenzied chorus. You might wonder how such a tense and chaotic situation could possibly be resolved. Well, the solution came from our security guard, who, without hesitation, pulled out a Kalashnikov rifle and discharged a volley of shots into the air. It's profoundly disturbing because it vividly illustrates the grave consequences of living in a continuous state of war. Each time I witness these real-life scenarios unfold before my eyes, I am deeply unsettled. It becomes apparent that fear is absent among them. For them, it's just part of their daily routine. Today, you are the one with the gun, so you get to make the rules. Tomorrow, it might be my turn with the gun, and then we'll have our own talk. This pattern is not unique, but is prevalent across several African countries, particularly within tribal groups. Conflicts can ignite over the simplest of household matters, such as who gets to use the soap first. These seemingly trivial disputes can quickly escalate into full-blown deadly shootouts, leaving people either dead or severely wounded. I have had the somber experience of visiting Red Cross hospitals in South Sudan where, surprisingly, many individuals found themselves admitted due to sheer happenstance. On one occasion, there was a young girl who attended her sister's wedding. The event was proceeding smoothly, the couple had just tied the knot, but suddenly a quarrel erupted and spiraled into a violent shootout. As a result, numerous guests at the wedding suffered injuries. This unsettling realization stems from the ease with which everyday disagreements or street brawls can devolve into savage gunfire with fatal outcomes, all occurring with disturbing normalcy. People who live in a constant state of warfare grow accustomed to frequent deaths as a mundane aspect of existence, as their everyday reality. This is genuinely horrifying. Consequently, it appears that they begin to devalue human life, seeing it as less significant and more expendable. It is sad. I am not suggesting that they experience less sorrow for the loss of their loved ones. On the contrary, that is far from the truth. During my time among the tribes, I witnessed mothers mourning the death of their children. They exhibited their anguish with the same intensity as mothers worldwide. Yet, it is striking how swiftly, under the pressures of conflict, an individual can transition from a mundane disagreement to decisive actions, draw a gun and fire, all in a matter of moments. This reality became evident to us immediately after we stopped at a kiosk selling a specific type of grass, known to act as a mild drug. Although this grass is deemed a weak drug, its use is prevalent among the local population. The frequency and acceptance of its consumption highlighted the community's efforts to cope with their harsh realities.
Alcohol is prohibited here, so many consume cat. This plant causes a certain state just 15 minutes after you start chewing it. Although cat is a drug, in Somalia, like in other African countries, its sale is not prohibited, so they sell it as freely as parsley.
They were telling me all about him, and I was diligently recording everything on my video camera. None of the people around us had any objections to the filming. At the same time, our driver stepped out of the car and made his way over to a nearby tent to purchase a packet of that particular herb. Just as I leaned out a little further from the car to capture a better angle, one of the local women caught sight of me filming her. First one woman noticed, then another, and soon a third woman started to panic. She began shouting across the entire market, "Hey, hey, hey!" And quickly others joined her chorus. Within a mere few seconds, we found ourselves encircled by an infuriated mob. The crowd began to aggressively shake our car. Our driver made a swift return, we accelerated quickly and managed to escape the scene. I was told later that if you are suspected of having hostile intentions in this place, convincing them otherwise is almost an impossible task. Immediate and decisive action is essential to evade serious confrontation. The moment a crowd begins to form, individuals instantly swarm around you, including those who were merely passing by or attending to their own affairs. They quickly gather together, forming a large and loud group, voicing their dissatisfaction vehemently. Every one of them seemed intent on literally bringing you to your knees. This incident was profoundly shocking and an experience I'll never forget. On another occasion, our security vehicle broke down and I thought to record the event, but the immediate reaction was intense. Why are you recording this? Delete it right now. Show me that you've deleted it, they protested. In their eyes, I was suddenly the enemy. This was just one of many tense moments we encountered. So if you find yourself walking through the bustling market and accidentally bump into someone, it might trigger a significant level of aggression. I understand this kind of aggression, considering that the people here have lived in a constant state of war for many decades. When you are perpetually in a war zone, relaxation becomes a luxury you can seldom afford. You're perpetually on high alert, always bracing yourself for potential actions, constantly scanning your surroundings for any signs of danger, and never truly letting your guard down.
Interestingly, the situation in Somalia wasn't always like this. The buildings now reduced to mere walls were once intact. This is what Mogadishu looked like in the 1960s, before the civil wars. As you can see, there were smooth, proper asphalt roads with luxury cars. Tuk-tuks here drove around, but very carefully, and there were almost no donkeys with carts. No sight of armed people, even the traffic police were unarmed. Today, every one of them has at least an automatic weapon. Those were the 60s, a brief period in history when almost no one interfered in Somali affairs. The country had just emerged. During World War II, there was no such country as Somalia. What is now Somaliland was a British colony. The rest was under Italian control, which fought on Hitler's side and lost. After lengthy disputes, the international community decided to grant the country independence. In 1966, Somalia appeared on the map.
If you take the time to explore Somalia, such as the town of Ale, which is situated far from the capital and notable for its pirate history, you'll find a host of fascinating sights. Right here, for example, I've come across an old Soviet truck. What is this exactly? It seems to be a Ural or something along those lines. Interestingly, the Soviet Union significantly aided Somalia back in the 70s when the country embraced communism. Their support extended beyond financial assistance to include military backing as well. Just over there, you can see the remnants of a radar station that the Soviet Union constructed for the Somali people. The hand of Soviet power is visible here in Somalia with the naked eye.
But almost immediately after this, the Soviet Union invested 40 million rubles, created a navy, and sent numerous specialists. Moscow helped people not to die from hunger on one hand, and on the other, supplied them with so much weaponry that Soviet Kalashnikovs are still sold for a couple of $100s in the markets. The situation got out of control when the local authorities, flush with automatic weapons and gifted money, began to feel their power and remembered that there are territories in neighboring countries that, in their opinion, belong to them and must be urgently reclaimed. President Siad Barre wanted to create a greater Somalia. Somalia started a war with Ethiopia, which by that time was also in the sphere of interest of the USSR. Moscow chose Ethiopia, left Somalia, and the Somalis were defeated. Eventually, the country split into many provinces ruled by the strongest and boldest. There is no police, education, or healthcare. In 1988, civil wars began and chaos ensued, which the Americans tried to combat. It all turned into 30 years of madness, where ordinary people were afraid to step outside.
Thus, anyone living under the constant threat of conflict tends to be highly suspicious of anything new, particularly when it involves a foreigner wielding a camera. Why are you filming us? Do you want to portray us as weak? Are you attempting to prove that our vehicles are unreliable? What are you after? Such questions immediately spark hostility, which undoubtedly stems from the harsh realities of living in a wartime environment. This hostility is a dreadful phenomenon, but it's not something unique to Somalia. No, this scenario unfolds among people in any nation where war has dragged on for years. It's quite understandable that individuals become increasingly nervous, aggressive, and irritable. They aren't naturally malevolent, rather, the conditions of war compel everyone to focus on survival, and survival often means having to defend oneself. Therefore, they are perpetually on alert, always ready to respond to any perceived threat.
Even when the camera is turned on me, the locals somehow react very violently, their anger boiling over intensely.
Stop camera. Stop.
Stop camera. I heard this phrase every 5 minutes as tourists constantly snapped away to capture every moment. If you travel by car and pass through a checkpoint, you constantly hear, "Stop camera, stop camera." This phrase is continuous, and you begin to feel a state of constant panic yourself.
It's absolutely astonishing. I have never witnessed anything quite like this before. This is the method they use to exchange fish here. And there they are, strewn across the floor, already gutted. One simply walks amidst the blood, navigating through the cacophony of screams all around, in utter disbelief at the surreal scene unfolding before their eyes.
This caution towards foreigners is quite common. Upon your arrival, the guide immediately sets a rule: we won't stay at any location in the city center for more than 15 to 20 minutes. The reason for this restriction is that the longer a foreigner with a camera and obvious wealth stays in one place, the more people become aware of their presence. This significantly increases the risk of unwanted incidents. Therefore, you are constantly rushed with reminders like, come on, it's time to move. Here's a typical scenario that slightly eases the tense atmosphere. A visit to the fish market. But even here, as soon as you take out your camera to film the locals, their reaction quickly turns hostile. They greet you with displeasure and suspicion, as if asking, "Why are you here filming us? What are you doing here?" This kind of response highlights the underlying tension and mistrust towards outsiders, emphasizing the delicate balance between curiosity and caution that permeates interactions with foreigners. This kind of response highlights the underlying tension and mistrust towards outsiders.
Here's how shops in Somalia decorate their storefronts. No matter what they sell, whether it's thread, clothing, or anything else, every shop owner hires an artist to paint the full range of their products on the facade. Take a look here. For instance, you can clearly see that this shop sells sugar, rice, and flour. It's a unique way to advertise and make it easy for customers to see what's available inside.
This feature is undoubtedly very charming and colorful. Coming here, it inevitably brings a big smile to your face. As you walk past each shop, you see the facades vividly decorated with bright images of the goods sold inside. Outside of Mogadishu, many people can't read or write, so these painted pictures often serve as a helpful guide to what they can buy inside. Initially, being in Mogadishu and asking about the reason for this decoration, I was told it was done for beauty and aesthetics. However, while traveling to other cities in the country, I realized that indeed many adults here cannot read or write. The visual displays not only add vibrancy to the bustling streets, but also play a crucial role in bridging the gap for those unable to rely on written information.
When we arrived at the site where a commissioner died in an explosion, we stopped here for exactly 1 minute.
This is the center of Somalia, Mogadishu. Right next to us, just an arm's length away, an explosion occurred, killing 1 officer and 2 guards, and such events happen here almost every day.
I found out that people living in Somalia don't really like it when visitors call their country dangerous. They think this because they've lived here all their lives. Their children go to school here. They consider those who say Somalia is a dangerous country as monsters. Locals drive such people away. They truly think if they are scared, they should leave. And I tried to think about the good people living there. They have hard lives, but they are kind-hearted. When I was driving down the street, I asked a passerby, when was the last explosion? He replied, there was an explosion last night. I asked him what kind of explosion. He replied that either police or officials were blown up. Then I stopped at a store to buy some of their local food, which is apparently called cash. At that moment, my car began to shake violently, and I thought, how can you call your country not dangerous when explosions happen so frequently, even in broad daylight? Despite these challenges, the resilience and warmth of the Somali people remain evident in their daily lives. Then we went to Puntland. This is a separate part of Somalia where the phenomenon of pirates originated. Somalia gained global notoriety due to these Somali pirates. The narrative of their emergence is deeply intriguing and intricately layered. Nowadays, the pirate population has surged dramatically. They have diversified into various types and factions. Today's pirates are no longer mere individuals armed with machetes. They represent organized entities with substantial investments backing them. Sponsors provide them with arms, fighters, trainers, and more. It has truly evolved into a legitimate enterprise. We managed to locate a pirate who agreed to speak openly with me without concealing his identity. He shared his reasons for choosing piracy, which incidentally appeared quite logical and comprehensible to me. The country had descended into utter chaos, and people were plunged into extreme poverty. There was no functioning national army, nor any institutions capable of safeguarding ordinary citizens. Faced with despair, people turned to piracy as a means of survival. As the situation worsened, piracy became not just a desperate act, but a strategic choice for many. In Africa, specifically in Somalia, the fish caught near the coasts is one of the main resources of the country. Huge tankers approached the shores and harvested an enormous, endless amount of marine fish. By doing this, they harmed the environment, destroying flora and fauna. And at some point, pirates began capturing these tankers and demanding ransoms for them. They believed that if others profited from it, they could too. I'm not justifying their actions. But I want to say that the reasons and motives for their actions are clear to me, rooted in a desire to reclaim what they saw as rightfully theirs amidst a landscape of exploitation.
We drove through the desert for a very long time, and suddenly I saw some huge boulders ahead. I didn't understand what it could be. Could these be monuments? Maybe some kind of totems? These were boulders of enormous size, as tall as a man. It turned out that these are what local anthills look like. Can you imagine? They are inhabited by tiny dwarf ants. I was shocked. I had never seen anything like it. These huge anthills appear by themselves. No one builds them. I don't know how it's even possible. It's not just an anthill, it's a whole skyscraper. I've never seen anything like it in my life. These settlements have a unique feature. It seems like they were built by little kids. All the houses here look like the kind of huts children usually build. Look at this. You're now seeing the center of the town of Ale. Instead of a typical center, there's an agricultural area here. Look at this. What is this structure? Could it be a toilet or something like that? No, it's a sheep pen. Yes, it's a pen for real sheep. Behold, this is the cutting-edge water storage technology implemented in a village of Somalia. It presents a fascinating innovation, a recent invention indeed. The villagers have excavated a substantial pit in a strategic location, carefully selected due to its convergence of numerous underground rivers and streams. Consequently, water intermittently surfaces here as these diverse waterways merge. To harness this resource sustainably, the locals have ingeniously installed a specialized electric pump within the pit. By Somali standards, this village stands as a beacon of advancement within the country. A veritable urban hub, exemplifying progressive water management in rural contexts.
However, my video was filled with expressions of respect for the Somali people, praising their admirable resilience and their ability to keep striving and progressing under extremely challenging conditions. I highlighted examples of individuals who are launching businesses and moving from impoverished neighborhoods to new areas in an effort to enhance their living conditions. We delved deeper into understanding this issue. That was Lyadov, and this is how I share my stories with you all. If you found it enjoyable, please don't hesitate to leave a like, write a comment, and express your thoughts. I appreciate your viewership. Thank you for watching.